हेलो एवरीवन, वेलकम टू माय यूट्यूब चैनल द सोलफुल डायरी। आज के वीडियो में हम बात करेंगे रॉबर्ट फ्रॉस्ट के पोम स्टॉपिंग बाय वुड्स ऑन अ स्नोई इवनिंग के बारे में। पोएट के बारे में हम पहले ही एक वीडियो में डिस्कस कर चुके हैं, जिसका लिंक डिस्क्रिप्शन में है। चलिए आज पोम के बारे में डिस्कस करते हैं। को इन डेप्थ डिस्कस करने से पहले जान लेते हैं उसके कुछ की फीचर्स। Robert Frost penned this poem, Stopping by Woods, on a snowy evening in 1922, subsequently published with his long poem New Hampshire. The poem explores the motivations of the poet, the inherent moods of the narrator, and his fixation with woods for an inner reason. Robert Frost is known as a regional poet willing to forge his own path and ignore the poetic trends of his time. The poem narrates the account of a man standing deep in the woods, torn between two choices. The narrator of the poem has stopped by for a brief moment amid a snowy evening in the woods, transfixed by the mesmerizing scenes unfolding. As he takes a moment to indulge in the dosage of naturalistic beauty, he is torn between staying in the woods and heading home. Robert Frost has a penchant for selecting two words, as was in the case in The Road Not Taken, where the narrator again arrives at the crossroads, deciding his permanent path. The crux of the poem lies in the conflict in a moment of solace versus pending obligations. The narrator is spellbound by the momentary distraction from worldly responsibilities, allowing him a moment of peace. Being naturalistic to the core, Robert Frost grounds his character in a forest mesmerized by the snow evening. The poem mildly indicates the presence of a human close by, albeit indoors, oblivious to the passerby. The woods, for the narrators, are immensely thick and dark and stand in all their glory. More so, the poet points an image etched in natural beauty, drawing deep sensory emotions from the reader. The woods are blanketed in thick snow, amplifying its beauty factor. The narrator voices concern about losing his way through the woods since it gets immensely dark at night and he decides to better get a move on. The poem is composed in iambic tetrameter pioneered by Edward Fitzgerald. All the perspectives verses conform to a AABA rhyming scheme. On the whole, the rhyme scheme follows the pattern of AABA, BBCP, CCDC, DDDD convention. The title of the poem is presented as a grand, all encompassing, thought provoking idea that inspires readers with its symbolic power. Other times, it is nothing more than a statement about the poem's content, such as the case with Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, which is about exactly what the title suggests. Stanza 1. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. The poet begins the poem Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening with the speaker intentionally considering and analyzing the fact that these woods seem similar to them. Technically, they are trespassing on another person's property, a forest on land that does not belong to them. But not knowing that the man won't be around for a while, the speaker can't stop themselves from taking a few moments to watch the peaceful descent of winter through thin forest. Though they don't refer to the subject, later on it's understood that both shared memories in the past. The poet points at the evidence of civilization nearby with the words house and village. They are aware of other people, but they don't know the speaker is there. Moreover, they are sure that the tenant didn't notice them. Given the heavy snow and thick woods, most people remain indoors. The narrator seems to enjoy the solitary existence. The narrator is passing by someone's residence, feeling satisfied with their shadowy existence, they have stopped briefly to take in the wondrous view in front of them. Stanza 2. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. In second stanza, the narrator draws attention to the human aspects of peacefulness. It's interesting for the speaker to note that the horse accompanying them on their journey isn't able to fathom the speaker has stopped to stare at the woods. With the phrase, the darkest evening of the year, it is easy to assume that this poem takes place on the night of the winter solstice. But this can also be interpreted to refer to the more difficult times in a person's life. The darkest evening of the year could be literal, or it could mean that the speaker is having a hard day. If so, it's all the more reason to stop and take a breath from the stresses and difficulties demanded by life while their horse looks or on without a care in the world. Moreover, the narrator seems to be considerate character interpreting the horse's thoughts. Her horse seems to be surprised at this sudden intermission along the woods. As the verse indicates, the intensity of the winter cold has rendered the lake frozen, but the stubborn narrator seems to adore the immediate present as opposed to imminent danger. The narrator is hinting at the immense darkness awaiting them. In the woods, night time can be extremely distressing for the weary traveler. Miles away from home, the speaker is torn between two choices yet again, to heed home or sink in the scenic view. Stanza 3. He gives his highness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. In stanza 3, the reader of the poem should feel the same pace the narrator is describing. The narrator continues to describe the thoughts they believe are in the horse's mind, which currently shakes its bells as it trudges along the road. The bells jingle playfully, indicating the horse's inclination to leave the woods for good, which feels gloomy and solitary. Since the horse can't speak its mind, the narrator chooses to. The speaker is miles from anywhere, buried deep in the woods where the only sound is wind and snowflakes falling. It is Robert Frost's imagery at its best. The poet affirms only three sounds in thick wood: wind, snow, and bell ringing. Stanza 4. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. During the fourth verse, the speaker makes it clear that unfortunately, peace doesn't last forever. Whatever long, dark, difficult day prompted the stop in the woods didn't go away while it was being started at. Distractions are wonderful things. Anything that can keep one minds off the trouble is a welcome addition to any day. But the real world still exists. The narrator admits feeling transfixed by the woods, enveloped in nature's exquisite beauty. A point has been the driven home already, but the speaker is getting worried as darkness draws nigh. But they have to resume their journey. Truly, the woods are dark and enchanting in their own way, yet they can also be merciless. Using but, the speaker demonstrates an intense longing to stay, but in their position, observing the beauty at their disposal for them, their untended responsibilities are a burden, compelling them against their will towards their eventual destination. The promises the speaker mentioned several times could be myriad, ranging from domestic errands to dealing with marital affairs. In the second two lines, the speaker is still standing in no man's land, unwilling to leave. They are contemplating remaining in the woods, maybe heralding their death. This might free their soul from the materialistic world Finally, the speaker tears themselves away from their meditation on nature. They are now firmly focused on getting home. Since the poet is still far from his house, he now contemplates his life ahead, focusing on the imminent end and the road awaiting him. This could also be a reference to Robert Frost himself, since he was awake all night completing his poem till the wee hours in the morning. On the other hand, it could be an undertone to the poet wishing his death to be nearby, giving him solace in its fold. Looking at the poem superficially, it's just about an ordinary stopping in a wood scenario. Robert Frost's penchant for naturalistic beauty is still evident. The individual immerses in the scene, momentarily torn between pending responsibilities and tempted to stay for a while. Finally, he gives into his longish journey and awaits obligations. Poetic devices, alliteration, repeating the same consonant sounds in close proximity, such as in to watch his woods fill up with snow. Personification, giving human like characteristics or feeling to non human things, such as when the speaker attributes their horse's attitude to human social norm. Symbolism, using symbols to represent ideas such as the woods representing a life's journey, the house representing a destination, and the bells representing an alarm or reminder. Imagery, creating a mental picture of the scene, such as the visual imagery of between the woods and the frozen lake, and the auditory imagery of downy flake repetition. The poem's conclusion is a well known example of repetition in English poetry, and the repeated lines create a soothing effect. Anecdote, using a part to represent a whole, such as when the speaker's journey represents the journey of life. Assonance, repeating vowel sounds in the same line, such as he will not see me stopping, and he gives his harness bells a shake. Themes, the opposition between nature and society. A central theme of Stopping by Woods relates to the opposition between nature and society. Frost reflects this opposition most clearly in the speaker's hesitation about whether to stop or to continue on their journey. On the one hand, the downy snow blanketing the woods conjures feelings of comfort and calm, which lure the speaker into a fantasy of rest. On the other hand, the speaker remains acutely aware of the promises they have made to someone in some other place, which lures them away from their restful fantasy. Thus, the allure of the natural world, symbolized by the woods, stands in opposition to the pull of the social world, symbolized by the promises yet to be fulfilled. Intriguingly, however, even as he introduces this opposition between nature and society, Frost also troubles it. For instance, even as the speaker feels drawn to the woods as a natural landscape, they also recognize that the woods aren't purely natural since they technically belong to a private individual. The woods are therefore also property. This explains why the speaker opens the poem by invoking the possibility of the owner's surveillance. However, hence a social obligation not to trespass infringes on the speaker's enjoyment of a natural landscape. The difficulty of choice. The speaker of Stopping by Woods is struggling to make a choice to stay or to go, yet much of the poem consists of the speakers evading the burden of making this choice for themselves. They begin by thinking about the owner of the woods and what he might think if he saw the speaker on his property. Then they consider the perspective of their house horse, who seems confused as to why they have stopped. Only in the final stanza does the speaker fully engage with the difficulty of the choice before them? The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. The allure of the woods implies a personal desire to stay, but the promises to keep indicate a social obligation to go. The final two lines then conclude the poem ambiguously. When the speaker says, "In miles to go before I sleep," for the first time, they're recognizing their obligation and seem designed to keep doing. But when the speaker says the same line a second time, it's as if they feel daunted by all those miles, and their desire to stay starts to reassert itself. We never find out what decision they will make. Instead, we leave them in the midst of their difficult choice. Value of purpose. Most critics of Ross' poem tend to read the speaker's social obligations in a negative light. When contrasted with their desire to remain in the tranquility of evening snowfall, it's easy to reject all social responsibility as an unwanted burden that restrains the speaker's personal freedom. From a different perspective, however, it's possible to interpret stopping by woods as highlighting the value of purpose. Having a sense of purpose helps make a life meaningful, and it provides us with the drive to carry on even when we might otherwise want to stop and give up. The speaker of Frost's poem clearly enjoys the tranquility of the winter landscape. However, they also feel lured by the symbolic resonance of the woods, whose dark and deep nature marks them as a symbolic space associated with getting lost, disappearing, and even dying. Against this lure, the promises the speaker feels they must keep exert a force that reminds them they have a reason to carry on. The speaker may feel their social obligation as a burden or as something that gets in the way of their desire for total autonomy and personal freedom. However, it also gives them a purpose. थैंक यू। आई होप आज की वीडियो आपको अच्छी लगी। कैसी लगे हमें कमेंट करके बताएं, और हमें ये भी कमेंट करके बताएं कि आप आने वाले वीडियोस में किस टॉपिक पर देखना चाहते हैं। और अगर वीडियो अच्छी लगी तो लाइक शेयर एंड सब्सक्राइब टू चैनल। मिलते हैं कल एक और वीडियो के साथ शाम 4 बजे। थैंक यू।